Let's get to the markets then in 3 minutes, Mark. And we do see in the last half hour or so, we have seen a bit of a pickup in US futures, positive sentiment. Is this being driven by the China tech story? Because I can see why Asia is in positive mood, picking up from the news that broke whilst Asia was closed yesterday around Alibaba, and that's really material. But what is it that's driving broad sentiment higher, you think, for risk assets?
I think it really is the China story. It's the combination of the China story and that every day that goes by that we're not in a financial banking crisis in the West. That means we can get a little bit more of a normalization of prices. And I think that it's those two big stories. But the normalization is just getting back to a world that was heading towards a US recession later this year anyways. That was the base case a month ago. So really it's not exuberant. The optimism part of it is coming out of China. And it's this idea that, hey, Jack Ma's returned, this Alibaba news would have been interpreted negatively a year ago. Now it's been interpreted positively. It's about how private businesses can thrive in the Xi Jinping era. And this is therefore being taken as a real positive sign for the global financial markets.
OK, so as we asked at the time that this news broke, this is broader than just about Alibaba. This tells us something important about the way that the Chinese government was to regulate tech, does it, Mark?
Yeah, look, I think so. We're going to have Sofia Ortega-Costa on the show later on today, and she's the chief China correspondent for Bloomberg, and she's really the expert here. I'm stealing her view. I steal her views when they match mine. I ignore them when they don't match mine. And they do match mine today in terms that she made the point 3 weeks ago, and it's proving very prescient, when everyone was very excited about the GDP target and how it was a bit of a disappointment in the level it was at and how it was phrased. She was like saying, no, the signal that there's a pro-business Xi Jinping is far more important. She wrote this macro view and saying that people are missing the big signal, which is that Xi Jinping wants private businesses to survive again. He wants them to do well, and that doesn't really matter about the GDP targets. And that is the big longer-term issue here. And I think people are starting to buy into that narrative a little bit. It's still early. It's only 3 weeks since that view was expressed by Sophia, but I think people are starting to come around to it, that there is a new era, positive era for private businesses in China, and that means the financial markets there can do much better.
What do you make, Mark, of the latest data out of the United States and how that weighs in or influences your thinking about when we get to rate cuts from the Fed, whether it happens later this year or whether it happens next year or beyond? Consumer confidence out of the US beating every forecast. Does this sound like an economy where inflation is going to come down significantly enough that we can see rate cuts from the Fed?
No, as you know, Anna, I am in the camp that recession starts in a few months' time, but we don't see the Fed panic until much later in the year. And the point is they won't cut rates at the first sign of a recession. And that has been my base case for a long period of time, and why I tend to believe that front-end yields have quite a bit to bounce still. Now, if you want to hear the counter view, many people are expressing it, so it's not unique, the counter view. But Simon White on my team has written the best argument for it, saying all the historical data basically points to the fact that the Fed may have to swivel very aggressively very, very soon. So look out for that macroscope column on the terminal if you want to hear why I might be wrong.
Yeah, he actually draws a line between when inflation peaks and when the Fed cuts, rather than necessarily where the rate of inflation is, which is interesting. And perhaps a topic we will linger on later on in the week. Thanks to Mark for thoughts so far. Remember, you can get up-to-date analysis and insight from Mark and the rest of the Markets Live team. You'll find that piece by Simon White there as well. MLIV Go is the function to use to get across the Markets Live blog on the Bloomberg terminal.